Phoebe Hale carried a crate of sparkling water bottles down the stone corridor beneath the grand estate, her footsteps muffled against the cold marble floors. The gala was in full swing above her, an elegant soiree complete with shimmering gowns, tuxedos, and laughter that floated through the night air like music. Phoebe, the cellar assistant, moved quietly among rows of oak barrels and wine racks, arranging bottles for replenishment. Her plain blouse and simple trousers marked her as invisible against the backdrop of extravagance. Occasionally, glances flicked her way, dismissive or amused. A woman in a sequin dress whispered loudly enough for Phoebe to hear, "Look at her clothes. Didn't she get the invite to dress up too?" A waiter chuckled nearby, muttering, "She probably doesn't understand half of what's going on at this party." Phoebe focused on her tasks, tuning out the undercurrent of patronizing voices. She had learned long ago to keep her head down and blend into the background. Outside, the grand lawn was packed with guests, the anticipation thick as the countdown to the fireworks show approached. The sky was clear, perfect for the extravaganza promised by the estate's owner. Suddenly, a piercing cry cut through the buzz of excitement. "My son, he's gone," a panicked woman shouted, voice trembling. The crowd's attention snapped from the sky to the flowered garden paths, where a group clustered anxiously near the grand fountain. A young boy, no more than 6, was missing. Shouts and murmurs spread like wildfire, the festive mood shattering into chaos. Security staff scrambled, guests looked around in alarm, and the fireworks exploded above, brilliant sparks that now felt distant, irrelevant, overshadowed by an urgent disappearance. The panic deepened as the crowd's festive murmur dissolved into frantic voices and hurried footsteps. Guests called out names, scanning hedge rows and darkened corners, but the boy was nowhere to be seen. Security guards barked orders, but their efforts were disorganized. Some rushed toward the main house, others darted into the front gardens, while a handful stood immobilized by indecision. Families huddled together, fear sharpening their eyes as they scanned every shadow. Phoebe stood near the edge of the chaos, the crate of sparkling water forgotten at her feet. She watched quietly, heart steady despite the urgency in the air. Many looked to the staff for help, but those responsible seemed overwhelmed, clustered in small groups debating strategies or waiting for authoritative direction that never came. Suddenly, Phoebe stepped forward. She raised her voice, calm but clear enough to cut through the mounting noise. "We need to focus," she said, her tone firm yet measured. "The boy's most likely still in the wooded area by the northern tree line. It's where children often wander, especially with the excitement tonight. We have to organize a proper search there, now." A few guests turned toward her, surprised by the sudden command from someone so plainly dressed and overlooked. A man who introduced himself as a security supervisor frowned. "And you are?" he asked, skepticism evident. "Phoebe Hale. I work here as cellar assistant," she replied, eyes steady. "I know this estate better than most. Please, if you can find some flashlights and radios, we can coordinate the search. The woods are dense, but manageable if we cover the perimeter systematically." Murmurs rippled through the nearby staff. Some offered hesitant nods, others exchanged doubtful looks. "Who'd have guessed the quiet one has the plan," whispered a waiter under his breath. Phoebe ignored the murmurs and moved toward a cluster of event coordinators. A young woman handed her a small handheld radio and a flashlight without hesitation, trusting the conviction behind Phoebe's words. "Divide into teams," Phoebe instructed. "2 people with radios and flashlights to cover the tree line edges. Call out any finds immediately. Keep your voices low, not to startle him. I'll explore the northern path closest to the fountain." Her voice was steady, despite the tension tight in her chest. A couple of security guards grumbled but followed her lead, flanking her as she stepped toward the thickening shadows between manicured gardens and wild woodland growth. Guests began to form cautious search groups, following Phoebe's guidance. The scent of damp earth and fallen leaves filled the air as Phoebe moved quietly, scanning the underbrush and hollows in the hillside. Her flashlight flicked over twigs and low branches, eyes sharp for any sign, a discarded toy, a thread of cloth, footprints. Then, she spotted it. A small, scuffed sneaker half buried under a pile of dry leaves. She whispered the discovery over the radio, found shoe near the northern tree edge. Possible direction here. Proceed carefully. Thank you, Phoebe, the voice crackled back. Team here is moving in. Phoebe pressed forward, voice soft as she called out, Tommy? Tommy, can you hear me? It's okay, we're here to help. Her words floated in the night air, a gentle beacon amid the mounting anxiety. Suddenly, movement stirred nearby, a flash of something small and quick darted through the branches. Phoebe followed with deliberate steps, breath even. The boy stumbled forward, wide-eyed and trembling, a faint scrape on his knee but otherwise intact. Tommy. You're safe now, Phoebe said gently as she crouched. The child clung to her, sobs quieting as she wrapped an arm around him, soothing his panic with a steady presence. She stood slowly, cradling the boy and peeling away twigs and dirt from his jacket. Guests and staff emerged behind her from the shadows, eyes wide, footsteps halting abruptly. A sudden hush fell over the crowd as all turned their gaze to Phoebe, the plain cellar assistant who had reappeared carrying the missing child like a lifeline. The mocking whispers and dismissive glances ceased, replaced by astonished silence. Is he all right? A woman asked breathlessly, stepping forward. Minor scrape. Frightened but okay, Phoebe replied steadily. We need to get him somewhere warm and calm. Guests surged forward, offering words of gratitude, but Phoebe held up a hand. Let the security handle the crowd, she instructed. We need to keep the boy calm, not overwhelmed. The estate owner arrived, a tall man with silver hair and a composed demeanor yet eyes reflecting relief and surprise. He reached out, placing a hand gently on Phoebe's shoulder. Thank you, he said quietly. You kept a clear head when others faltered. Phoebe nodded, the weight of attention unfamiliar but not unwelcome. Her heart still beat firmly in her chest, not from the crowd, but from the urgency and responsibility she had taken on without hesitation. As medics attended to the boy, Phoebe watched the gathering crowd, meeting eyes that no longer overlooked her, voices now laced with respect. In that charged silence, the Gala's shimmer faded beneath a new, unspoken recognition. Here was someone who mattered, in a moment that counted more than any fireworks display. Phoebe Hale sat alone in the small break room adjacent to the estate's cellar, the muted hum of the Gala's distant laughter filtering through the thick walls. Her fingers nervously traced the edge of a small bandage wrapped around her palm, a souvenir from the minor scratch the missing boy had received that night. The adrenaline was ebbing away, replaced by a faint echo of something deeper. Memories surfaced, not of this gala or the flurry of guests, but from a different life altogether, one lived far from the quiet service of the estate. A blur of scenes flashed in her mind, sirens wailing through rain-soaked streets, flickering fluorescent lights in overcrowded emergency rooms, and the resolute faces of patients clinging to life. Phoebe remembered the rush of flying through city streets, her paramedic uniforms snug and comforting, the comforting weight of emergency medical equipment strapped to her shoulders. She recalled the sharp commands she'd given over radios as a leader of a small team, skills honed through seasons of crisis. She had been good at that life, respected and valued. Hospitals recognized her quick thinking and steady hands, colleagues depended on her calm presence amid chaos. But beneath her composed exterior, stress had tightened its grip. Night after night of trauma exacted a toll Phoebe concealed with practiced indifference. The final breaking point came with a tragedy that unsettled her entire world, a car accident that took the life of her partner, James. James had been her anchor, a fellow paramedic who'd shared with her the thrill and heartbreak of emergency response. When the chaos of that night unfolded, the shrill screech of crunching metal, fading breaths, and futile calls for help, Phoebe was helpless to save him even as she saved others. The loss battered her soul with a weight she couldn't shed. In the months that followed, the fire inside her dimmed. Memories that once fueled her resolve now burned with pain. She withdrew from the demanding life she had built, choosing instead anonymity and quiet. When an opportunity arose to take a job as a cellar assistant at the estate, she grasped it without hesitation, viewing the simpler tasks and sheltered environment as a fragile refuge. Phoebe's daily routine at the estate was worlds away from rushing through emergencies. Her duties included inventory checks, cleaning wine racks, and moving crates to prepare for lavish celebrations. The work was unhurried and allowed her mind to breathe. Here, no life and death decisions waited for her, no sirens invaded her thoughts. Yet, beneath the surface, her passion for emergency care had not vanished. Late at night, she found herself poring over medical journals she'd saved, refreshing her knowledge quietly in the solitude of her small apartment. She practiced bandaging techniques and studied new protocols, careful to shield this from the casual onlookers who assumed she was just another invisible worker. Her modest appearance masked the knowledge and experience she carried, a secret held close. When Phoebe's rescuing of the lost child unfolded at the gala, it was no accident. Her calm assessment of the chaotic scene and quick strategic decisions were the instincts of a seasoned emergency responder waiting for a chance to act. It was as though the dormant part of her, suppressed but never extinguished, had been awakened by the crisis. Could she really step back into that life? The question had tangled in her mind ever since that night. The memory of James lingered, both a bittersweet comfort and a looming shadow. She feared the grief would reopen, she feared the relentless pressure would consume her again. But more than fear, Phoebe carried a fragile hope. The small spark she saw in the boy's eyes, the quiet nods of appreciation from strangers, that night reminded her of the reason she had chosen saving lives originally. That reason, buried beneath loss and retreat, had not truly gone away. In quiet moments like these, she grappled with the complex pulse of her identity. Who was she now? The cellar assistant, unseen and overlooked? Or the capable paramedic with a steady hand and calm voice who still held a purpose beyond the walls she now worked within? Phoebe leaned back in the worn chair, closed her eyes for a moment, and let the memories settle. The sounds of the gala outside, from laughter to murmur to music, felt distant but no longer alien. Within her, the pieces of her past and present balanced precariously, hinting at the possibility of a path forward, but she wasn't quite ready to take that step. For now, she would continue to hold the quiet knowledge and strength that saved a child that night. It was enough to keep her steady, for one more evening, one more day. The next morning, the estate's grand entrance area quieted under the soft glow of early sunlight. Flower arrangements that had dazzled the night before now looked fragile, petals edged with dew. Guests and staff moved about with a strange mixture of exhaustion and lingering excitement. The gala's chaotic climax, the disappearance and rescue of the young boy, had become the central story whispered over breakfast tables and in newsrooms alike. Phoebe Hale arrived at her station below the estate, the air still cool and fragrant with lingering scents of wine and wood. It was a quiet place compared to the gala's recent frenzy, but she noticed subtle shifts in the way people looked at her. The usual practice of glancing through or past her eyes had transformed into brief nods of acknowledgement. A waiter she had never spoken to before offered a polite smile as he passed. Seated near the front entrance, a small group of guests who had stayed overnight quietly murmured among themselves, pausing their conversations as Phoebe passed. Their eyes lingered for a moment longer than before, filled with a fresh sense of respect. News outlets had latched onto the night's dramatic turning point. Social media feeds exploded with videos filmed by guests capturing the frantic search, culminating in the moment Phoebe emerged from the shadows of trees, carrying the small boy. The grainy footage showed her steady hands soothing trembling shoulders and offering quiet comfort as the crowd parted to witness her return. Comments hailed her as a hero, the unlikely savior hidden in plain sight. A few online profiles pieced together her background after the gala. Images surfaced, older photos of Phoebe dressed in a paramedic uniform, certificates, even brief clips from community events where she led first aid workshops. These fragments painted a picture of a skilled, dedicated professional who had quietly stepped away from public life. At work, the atmosphere shifted. Staff who used to brush past her now greeted her with genuine smiles and tentative questions. "Phoebe, are you okay? Everyone's talking about you," a young assistant asked shyly. Phoebe gave a small nod, grateful yet reserved. Something unspoken had changed. The invisibility that had cloaked her no longer fit. One afternoon, as Phoebe restocked shelves, the estate owner himself approached. He was the first among the elite to acknowledge her openly. "Miss Hale," he said, voice warm. "Your actions last night were extraordinary. We were lucky you were here." Phoebe's shyness flared briefly, but she replied with modest gratitude. "I did what anyone would." He smiled, but in his eyes was a clear understanding that this was no ordinary response. Meanwhile, the child's parents reached out to express their profound thanks. The mother arranged a brief meeting to relay how Phoebe's calm presence had anchored her son through fear. The father shared a simple but heartfelt gift, a handmade journal engraved with the boy's name and a note thanking Phoebe for restoring their peace. The community surrounding the estate took notice as well. A local radio station aired a heartfelt interview with a guest who had witnessed the rescue unfold. Her voice cracked with emotion as she described Phoebe's steady hands and composed demeanor, emphasizing how rare it was to see such bravery from someone so understated. Even the estate staff meeting that week centered on the incident. The manager encouraged sharing lessons on crisis response, specifically highlighting Phoebe's effective leadership. Her co-workers absorbed the praise with quiet surprise. Reflective whispers acknowledged the sharp contrast between Phoebe's usual invisibility and this newfound recognition. By the week's end, the turning tides had settled into a new reality. Where once Phoebe's presence blended unnoticed into the background, she was now a figure who inspired a sense of trust and admiration. Guests at subsequent events sought her out for a word, a smile, or simply to offer thanks. Yet Phoebe remained grounded. She did not seek the spotlight, preferring the modest routine she had chosen. But now, her footsteps felt lighter, buoyed by the subtle changes in attitude from those around her. At night, scrolling through her phone, she sometimes glanced at the online tributes and photos resurrecting her past, evidence that her story extended far beyond the cellar's cool confines. She allowed herself a quiet pride, not in the spotlight itself, but in the realization that her skills and courage were alive and recognized. As the gala receded into memory, Phoebe stood at a quiet crossroads. The world around her took notice, breaking through the invisibility she had accepted for so long. And quietly, without fanfare, she began to consider what it might mean to reawaken a part of herself she thought had been left behind. A few weeks after the gala, Phoebe sat at her usual spot in the estate cellar, organizing wine bottles with mechanical precision. The routine comforted her, the familiar clink of glass, the cool air, the muted conversations from upstairs. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet transformation was unfolding. The events of that night had drawn her out of invisibility, and with it came unexpected opportunities she hadn't anticipated. It was mid-morning when the estate's manager entered, carrying an envelope marked with the insignia of the city's Emergency Medical Training Center. Phoebe looked up, her brow furrowing slightly at the sight of official stationery. "Phoebe, this arrived for you," he said gently, placing the envelope on the counter. "Looks important." She hesitated, fingers brushing the crisp paper as a swirl of emotions rose within her: curiosity, apprehension, a touch of fear. Slowly, she broke the seal and unfolded a neatly typed letter. "Dear Ms. Hale, in recognition of your exemplary conduct during the recent estate gala emergency, and given your prior experience and training, we would be honored to offer you a place in our specialized paramedic recertification program. This program is designed for skilled professionals wishing to return to emergency medical practice, with full support and mentorship to ensure a successful revival of their careers. We understand such decisions are deeply personal and complex. Please take your time to consider this invitation. The option to begin training at your convenience will remain open. We look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Dr. Marisol Chen, Program Director, City Emergency Medical Training Center." Phoebe's heart pounded as her eyes scanned the letter again. Years had passed since she handed in her paramedic badge. The life she used to lead felt distant and delicate, like a thread stretched between past and present. The manager stepped back, sensing the weight of her silence. "It's a sign people see your talent, Phoebe. You don't have to walk away forever." She nodded slowly but said nothing, the words stuck in her throat. After he left, Phoebe sat in quiet reflection, the letter folded neatly beside her. Days went by, each bringing a steady stream of encouragement from people she had helped at the gala. Messages, handwritten notes, even invitations to community events where she could speak about emergency response, and more importantly, about courage in unexpected places. One evening, as Phoebe sat on the small balcony of her apartment, the city lights twinkling below, she thought of James. She remembered their shared laughter in the ambulance, the long nights tending to strangers, the pain that led her to step away. The thought of putting on that uniform again stirred a mix of fear and longing. Could she face the intensity once more? Could she carry the weight without losing herself? A knock at the door startled her. It was Clara, a co-worker from the estate who had become a quiet pillar of support over recent weeks. "You've been thinking about the program, haven't you?" Clara said gently as she stepped inside. Phoebe nodded, her eyes reflecting the burden of the decision. "I'm scared. What if I fall apart again? What if I'm not the same?" Clara smiled, sitting beside her. "You're not alone this time. And remember, nobody expects you to be perfect. Just you. Your strength is in knowing when to stand up and when to rest." The words kindled a flicker of hope. Together, they reviewed the letter, researching the program's details: small class sizes, tailored support, flexible schedules. It wasn't a leap into the unknown but a carefully mapped step forward. Days later, Phoebe called the training center. Her voice was steady as she accepted the invitation, scheduling enrollment and expressing readiness to begin. The first day of the program was a mix of emotions, a flutter of nervous excitement masked by practiced calm. Phoebe donned a new uniform that fit differently from the one she'd left behind: lighter fabric, modern design, and the imprint of new beginnings. In the classroom, brightly lit and filled with familiar equipment, she was surrounded by others returning from breaks, career pauses, or new callers to emergency medicine. The instructor, a poised woman named Dr. Chen, welcomed them warmly, noting the courage it took to re-engage. Phoebe's hands trembled slightly as she held the stethoscope, but her eyes gleamed with purpose. Training was challenging: long hours, rigorous drills, and the relentless pace of learning, but Phoebe met each task with steady determination. The past no longer felt like a shadow but a foundation on which she rebuilt herself. Outside, news of Phoebe's training spread quietly through the community. The parents of the rescued boy sent a bouquet to the center, accompanied by a heartfelt note expressing their appreciation for the positive impact Phoebe had on their child's life, and now for the wider community. Within weeks, Phoebe found herself leading small group sessions, sharing her expertise and calm demeanor with newer trainees. Her voice, once quiet and overshadowed, now carried the authority of experience and compassion. One late afternoon, after a long day of practical exercises, Phoebe stepped outside into the fading light and pulled out her phone. A recent photo from the Gala's fireworks was trending, her image carrying the boy, a quiet hero captured in the embrace of night and light. She smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace and resolve. At home that evening, her young daughter awaited, arms wide open. Phoebe knelt down and wrapped her in a warm hug, the weight of the past and hopes for the future mingling in the simple joy of the moment. No longer invisible, no longer holding back, Phoebe Hale had returned to the place where her strength had always belonged. The journey ahead would not be without challenges, but this time, she would walk it with courage and the steady support of those who believed in her. Her life was a testament not to past pain, but to the resilient heart that dared to rise and heal again.